Hello, my name is Paul Jones and I'm a professional artist. I have been painting for almost 42 years now, and the greatest influence that I have is my dad. He started me into the interest in doing artwork, and he is a great influence on what I've become today, both a critique and a teacher. Today I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on this particular print here. I'll be replicating this onto the canvas, and I'll be able to demonstrate some of the techniques I've learned over the years, how to do fine detail, and you'll see it from start to finish. So hopefully this will be done in good enough stages to where you can understand how I do my paintings. So what I normally do to get started is select my colors, which are already pre-selected here on the table, and I will be pouring those in the order in which I will be using them to produce this picture here. So I've already lined up the paints, beginning with the top that I'll be transitioning down here to the lighter oranges and ultimately the sun, and then I'll be drawing the rest of it from there. So sit back and enjoy, and I hope this gives you something. If you're an aspiring artist, I hope this is something that will able to give you at least a base, a foundation to start your work with. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pour my paints now. The ones I'll be selecting. And today I'll be starting with what appears to be a light lavender up here. So I'll be mixing lavender and this Dutch blue together. So the ones that I use first, I pour in puddles closest to me. And I know that I'll be mixing these. So as I go down, I will be putting the colors in the same order on the palette. I'm using liquid acrylic, and I've been using this for about 30 years now. I did start in oil paint, but the acrylic dries quicker, which I like, because if I do any mistakes, well, it helps me out to cover them up pretty quick. The puddles I make are roughly the size of a silver dollar, depending on how much surface I need to cover. In this case, I'm using an 11 by 14 canvas, which doesn't require a whole lot of paint. And there's my pre-selected colors. So to begin, the first thing I do is I wet the brush down, pulls all the water into the bristles so that it too pulls the paint into the bristles and gets the maximum coverage when you make the strokes of paint on here. So starting at the top, the first thing I'm going to do is mix lavender and Dutch blue together. And we know that this is darker than what the picture is referencing. So I have to mix white to lighten this up. About like this. I'm going to use this paint in the first couple strokes, depending on how far down I need to come, and I'll slowly transition all these puddles the further I go down. So the first stroke of paint, always an exciting thing for me, is I just start and I make the paint to where it glides onto the canvas. The reason for the glide is so that the next color selection that I use, I'm going to quickly rinse this off. The next color that I use will blend with this while it's still wet on the canvas. So I'm going to go and grab this peach color and mix it with my first color, which will give a nice smooth blend. I'll simply make a stroke of paint like this. That's all still wet. Then I'll give a quick rinse. I'll grab the next color down, which in this case is yellow mixed with peach. And I'll make one streak here. I go back and forth until that whole thing is weaved in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and blend those two colors together. to give that smooth transition. And as I work up the canvas, it grabs the first colors that I laid down. I'm going to stop right here. So I'm going to give my brush a quick rinse. And I'm going to keep going down further the canvas. Now I'm going to be using orange. Mix that with yellow and a little white and make a separate puddle over here. Sometimes you crisscross back and forth to make sure the color is fully blended. And I'll simply go into here. And I'll leave that for now. Grabbing the next darker orange, I'll grab this and mix it with that same puddle. Now I have a perfect 50-50 blend. And I'll do the same thing. And you can see how it's transitioning down. And the final thing, where the sun is setting, the richest orange will be a fire orange. So I'll take that too and mix it with the previous puddle, which gives it a 50-50 mix. And that's where the sun's going to be the most rich in the sky. Taking a brand new brush, sometimes I'll use a house brush, a painting brush like this, no water. I'll just simply go over very lightly this way to blend all that in. And then I'll give it up strokes, just very lightly. Once I crisscross those, see how that's smoothing out just like this? And while the paint is still wet on the canvas is when you want to blend this the most. So this dry brush is taking out the harsh lines of the previous brush that laid down the first strip of paint. And that's how you blend this to make it give a nice soft blend. Now, I don't worry too much about any streaking in here, knowing that I'm going to be putting some trees in here. That's going to cover up a lot of these lines here that you won't see. Typically, clouds will be in the sky, so you can paint over those streaks. It's just not going to matter. The beauty of painting, especially with acrylic, is it dries so fast that when you do have problems like this, it's nothing to worry about. Just relax. You can just paint right over that stuff anyway. There really is no mistakes in painting, because if you do make a mistake, well, you just wait till it dries and paint right over it. I'm going to use my trusted inherited hair dryer. What this is doing is setting the paint firmly into the canvas so I can develop a horizon line here to paint all this right in here. So for now, I'm just going to blow dry this out. You can see where I had a little bit of a boo-boo right here where I drug the hair dryer into the paint, but even then, that's not to worry about. This is all base coat painting right here. Okay, so once I have the sky done, the next thing I'm going to do is establish the natural horizon line in the back. Where am I going to start putting those trees in the furthest back hill? Well, what I typically do is I'll just take the print and I'll scale it up right in front of the canvas and give an estimate about where that line is. In this case, I came down just far enough. More or less, this line is a horizontal. So I'm just going to take a light pencil and show where that line is going to be. Now I know that everything below this line is going to be these darker colors. This has a short piece of a field here, which I'm just going to remove that today. And I'm going to transition this down dark. So just to know where my horizon is, I'm going to change palettes for now. And I just use corrugated cardboard scraps for my palettes because, well, I do everything very inexpensive in my artwork. So to make what most people would look at and see this as a black, I almost never use black in my paintings. What I use is burnt umber and midnight blue. I mix these 50-50 to give that really dark, rich color. Plus this is a softer color than a stark black. So again, I'm going to go in and start mixing my colors. And in this case, like I said, 50-50. So I'll make this puddle as big as this puddle and just mix them evenly. I can go back to my brush, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to rinse some of that orange out that I used for the sky. Put it on my sink and just mix these colors together. Now remember what I said about mixing acrylic paint. When it dries much darker. So I'm mixing this about as even as I can. And I know that when this dries, it's going to look nearly black. So knowing where my horizon line is, and it doesn't have to be perfect, I'm just going to kind of rough that in. Just paint all this in. Knowing that this is all going to be dark, I'm going to do the same thing on the canvas. You pick up a lot of tricks of the trade along the way. I know I did. I used to look at other artists that I really admired, and I would just study their paintings, how they came to do all the stuff that they do that impressed me so much. And I hope this video would influence someone who is an aspiring artist in the future. Just like that. So what I've done is I just blocked off this color right here. Now with my trusted hairdryer, we're just going to dry all this up. Okay, that's pretty much dry right now, and as you can see, this is going to be the base coat, and you can see how dark that really looks, especially, I hope you can see it on the camera, but that blue and the brown has become a near black. But what I have an issue with right now is, if you look up here, that's a solid color. Here you can see canvas still showing through. So I'll just go back over it lightly with that same color, and that's why I make a bigger puddle for a second coat. Use my sink here because you don't want excess water. I normally just use a bath towel just to dab off the extra water off the bristles. And so I'm going to go back in there one more time and hit the trouble spots. You don't have to cover the whole thing. You just hit the trouble spots, and that's just a lot done very lightly. And since the canvas is still warm from the hairdryer, it's going to dry much quicker than the initial first coat. And I'll go back over that one more time. Another thing to point out is how fast your paint dries, even with a hairdryer, is all based on how much water content that you have in your paint. In this case, I like to mix my paint with just minimum amount of water. And since I use a liquid acrylic, it already has a great amount of water volume in there. It doesn't take a whole lot to dry on the canvas, even without a hairdryer. So again, if I just use it straight from the bottle, it's going to take much longer than it is if I mix it with my water. Okay, now that I have my horizon, now that I have my sky in place, I can start filling in the details and the placement of the things that are in front of both the sky and the horizon. In this case, we have a back tree line followed by foreground tree lines.